Welcome to New Money, where each week we explore China's startups and entrepreneurs. I am Tracy Chang. Now, few would call China the kingdom of bicycles these days, with long lines of cars jamming city streets across the country. But this long-forgotten nickname seems to be resurfacing in recent years, as startups and new technologies are giving a boost to this greener means of transportation.
Like millions of college students in China, Peking University junior Wang Yue relies on a bicycle to commute between her dorm, classrooms and labs numerous times a day. Owning a bicycle makes getting around a large campus easier, but it also creates inconveniences.
For example, I have to go to somewhere outside the campus from the west gate, but I might come back from the south gate. If I own a bike, I would have to think about whether I need to go to the west gate again to pick up my bike.
Wang solved that dilemma easily enough by joining the online platform OFO last summer. The student gave her bike to OFO and can now use among 1,000 bikes anytime, anywhere on campus for free. To ride any of the bikes, all Wang needs to do is to enter an OFO bicycle number on her smartphone. She will immediately receive a 4-digit code to unlock the bike. Once her trip is finished, Wang just parks the bike, locks it, and hit the finish button on her smartphone. OFO Bicycle was established in September 2015 by a group of Peking University graduates who are also passionate cyclists. Their business idea originated from their everyday hassles.
本科4年，我丢了5辆车。
I lost 4 or 5 bikes during my undergraduate studies. I wouldn't say they were all stolen, but I just couldn't find them anymore after summer holidays. I just couldn't remember where I parked my bikes. So this was a problem.
When we were at college, we saw that almost every freshman would buy a bike and most graduates would leave their bikes on campus, either giving them away or selling them. So a large number of bicycles were abandoned on campus and stayed idle. We were thinking if we could come up with a solution where these bicycle resources could be used again and better serve every freshman who's new to the campus.
People who have donated their own bikes to OFO get free access to all of the bikes. Others are charged based on the time and distance of their usage. If they only ride the bikes on campus, the top rate would be 2 yuan per day. OFO makes slight conversions to every bicycle it owns. The first is to install a combination lock. Then each bike is given an identical plate number. OFO's computer program will designate an unlock code to the plate. The final step is to spray some yellow paint on the bike to signify that it's a shared bicycle.
At the beginning, it was definitely hard to recruit bike owners because they might not have seen the benefits they would enjoy and be willing to share their bikes. So we put many new bicycles we purchased into the pool.
OFO owns about 10,000 bicycles. 1/3 of them were donated by their users. Nearly 300,000 university students across China are registered on OFO, and the daily number of orders for bikes hovers around 70,000.
The ups and downs of orders match exactly with the students' daily routine. There are several rush hours a day, beginning with morning classes and then lunchtime. There will be another peak in the early afternoon from dorms to classrooms. So whenever students go between classrooms, canteen, libraries, and dorms, there will be a spike in our orders.
The campus ties help OFO allocate its bikes accordingly at popular spots. The platform has found that every bike is used about 4 or 5 times a day. The shared bike economy on campus has quickly spread to 30 universities across China.
Just a reminder, you can use your smartphone to scan the QR code on the bottom of your screen to find the latest and all previous episodes of New Money. And in today's discussion, I'm pleased to have Professor Jia Ning joining me again in the studio. She is the Deputy Director at the China Business Case Center at Tsinghua University. Thank you so much for coming, Professor Jia.
Thank you.
So let's start talking about sharing economy. There's a lot of talk about it.
Right.
We have Uber, we have Airbnb. All these businesses are based on the concept of sharing economy.
Right.
So can you tell us how different is OFO's business model compared to Uber and Airbnb?
Well, I think fundamentally the business model is actually quite similar. If you think about Airbnb, it basically connects consumers to all these idle apartments, right? Didi, for example, connects consumers with idle taxis. So OFO, what this company does is connect college students who are in demand of bicycles to all these idle bicycles. So this notion of sharing economy is basically to maximize the utilization of these idle resources. So in that sense, I think the fundamental idea is quite similar. But what's different between OFO and say Airbnb or Uber is the fact that if you think about Uber and Airbnb, their market space is actually wider, right? It's a much bigger market. And also if you think about the transaction cost, transaction price, for Uber and Airbnb, it's actually significantly higher compared to bicycle, right? So for bicycle, you charge 2 RMB per day, whereas for Airbnb, it's basically 100 RMB or 200 RMBs at least per day, right? So the transaction price is widely different. And also, I think another dimension of difference is OFO, the company has to invest into bicycles, and also all these locks initially. So there is certain upfront investment going into it. Whereas for Airbnb and Uber, all they're doing is providing this platform that connects between demand and supply.
So that's really a key difference because upfront capital is a huge part of this. Can you tell us about this company, OFO's business model, and how do you evaluate it?
So this company's business model, I think, has certain advantage in the sense that it's closely related to this popular idea of O2O, online to offline. So this is very intuitive. We know, Airbnb, Uber, all these companies are following very similar business models. So in that sense, it's intuitive, it's easy to understand. But I think a potential limitation or disadvantage of this business model, which is also different from other O2O companies, that they actually as initial operations, they do need to acquire bicycles, right? And they need to install all these locks, and then they have to maintain all these bicycles. So there's significant costs going to this operations. And another limitation is that in terms of operation, right? The company has to manage thousands of bicycles, and basically you have to have people on the ground to deal with sort of unexpected events. So the operation is actually quite challenging.
So human management is another factor to be considered.
I think so, especially the offline operation, right? Even though it's an online to offline business, but the core, the most challenging part is still the offline component. So you need people, because they're expanding and operating in different university campus. So you do need people to actually be physically on each campus, right, and monitor basically the landing of these bicycles. And if anything were to go wrong, you need technicians there to make the repair and to make the maintenance.
Professor Jia, we talked about it. They charge so little for the usage of these bicycles, and if you do donate your bicycle, you can basically use their service for free. So how does their revenue model work? How do they make money?
This is sort of an industry-wide challenge, or this challenge facing all companies using the same so-called online to offline business model. And as you mentioned, right, so for Didi or for Airbnb, the per transaction price is quite high. So eventually, maybe someday, these companies will be able to earn some commissions on every transaction that go through the platform. But for companies like OFO, as you mentioned, every transaction, they charge very little, like 2 RMB per day. This is not how you can make a sustainable sort of revenue, right, going forward. So the company does have to think creatively and try to find other sources of revenues through, for example, advertising. Right? So one idea I can think of, we're just brainstorming here, is maybe you can advertise on their bicycles. Right? That's one possibility, and a lot of companies do that. or just find some other ways to attract all your users, right? Create some kind of fans economy, and then operate this online platform. This is probably another way to extend your business and find revenue, but it is very challenging.
And when you talk about advertising, usually targeted, segmented advertising is very effective, but the prerequisite has to be you have to have a larger than normal user base. In this sense, they primarily operate on college campuses, so I assume the user base is relatively small, and also the consumer power of these people are relatively low as well.
Well, I think yes and no. You know, college students is a niche market, but it's also a very homogeneous group. So you know exactly, I mean, their lifestyle and everything is very similar, right? You know exactly what their common demand is. So in that sense, I think it's easier to do segmented advertising. Also, you mentioned the purchasing power. I think we cannot underestimate the purchasing power for college students now in China. You know, a lot of them, they're a single child in the family. Their parents are willing to support them.
So they have like 5 other people making money for them.
That's right. And also, if you think about, you know, just look at sort of how often our students change their cell phones, right? So the new phone comes out, they basically, you know, just drop the old one. So I think they do have certain purchasing powers.
That's right. Well, we're heading for a short break. When we come back, we'll look at how campus entrepreneurship looks like.